Okay, it's a bit colder today, but let's try out my letterbox opener, but with SMS messaging this time. So first I'm going to record on my phone. Okay, so phone's recording. Let's go out to the letterbox, open and close it. And looks like we got a message, and it also came into my old Pebble watch too. Okay, for the SMS messaging and email messaging functions, I'll be using external services and need keys and passwords and things. To hide those so they don't appear in my GitHub, I'm going to be using a Firebase functions capability where you can set configuration parameters where basically it hides it from the source code. It's only available for people who have access to the actual project, so I'll be able to secure those keys and passwords. So this page under Firebase documentation talks about environmental configuration, and to give an example of what I'll be doing. So in my terminal I'm going to put in that Firebase configuration command. I'm going to set the Twilio phone number, these are all examples, the SID, and the auth token that I need, which are all things I want to keep private. And let's run that. Okay, we're deployed. Now let's check whether the configuration parameters are there. I'll use the config get. And there we see an object created around Twilio with the parameters I wanted. And so later on I'll show you how I'm using those in the actual cloud functions to get those parameters. Okay, over in the ourLora UI, I had to change the user component to allow the addition of this SMS phone number field, so that's where SMS messages will be sent. I also added some editing here so you can see if I have an invalid phone number, it tells me, won't update the information. The other thing I had to change in the UI was under applications. Let's look at curl trigger. I now have a notification type of sending an SMS notification. So I set that for the curl one just for testing. And now to send SMS messages from Firebase, you'll need to sign up to SMS service. I'm using Twilio. We can see it here. Okay, in my project in VS Code, I go into the functions folder and then do an install of the Twilio library. So in my trigger.ts cloud function, most is still the same. You see I've added another case statement. So if the trigger action is SMS in this case, so that was a new trigger action value I added in here in the UA and moved the model over here as well. So if it's SMS, then it does much the same thing as the FCM notifications. First it calls send SMSs, plural, and pass the trigger event and application just like before. So let's go down there. And this follows fairly much the same flow as the notification. So send SMSs here. So one thing that's different, and you saw earlier in this video where I get the configuration parameters for Twilio, because I want to keep those secure, I keep them as a function environmental variables here, but move them into constants, and then I set up the Twilio client using that information. One thing I found speeds up opening up the Twilio client is to include this lazy loading parameter. Then same thing as before, go through each of the users who are associated with that application, then call send SMS singular for each of those users. I got a bit of debugging code in here, I'll take that out. And then if that particular user has an SMS phone number on their user account and it's not blank, then I know I need to send a message to that person, so I have all the information I need. So the body will be the trigger message, the phone number will be my Twilio assigned phone number, and 2 will be the user's SMS phone account we just saw set up. And then I'll send the message. I have some debugging information. I'll write a console log with the SID of the message that was sent, or else errors if Twilio didn't send it. But that's the extent of it, and we saw that working with my mailbox at the beginning of this video. So I also want to be able to send trigger actions via email. So first thing I did is I created a new email account to be what my service interface is with. So just go to Google and say create an email account. It gives you a screen like this, fill it in. I've already filled mine in, and the next page it gave me after I'd filled it in was my basic Gmail interface. So go to your account details and manage your Google account for the one you just created. So in your account, go to the security tab, and down here there's this box here, less secure app access. You need to turn that on. I've already got mine turned on because I've gone through this already, but if you can click on that and then you can switch it on and off. I've got mine turned on, and that's needs to be turned on because when sending email messages from Firebase cloud functions, it's going to be seen as a less secure app, so it needs to be able to have that interface. In our Firebase functions, we're going to install Node Mailer to be our interface to email. So first we go into the functions folder, we do a npm install Node Mailer, and we also do an install of the types library for npm Node Mailer to make it work well with TypeScript. So let's have a look at the email trigger I set up. So if I go to applications, curl, I've got 2 triggers here, only one of them is active. So this email one, let's have a look at that. So it looks a lot like the other one. So the name of that trigger is curl email, the message is test message triggered by curl IoT transaction, and there's the main changes. It's now send user email as the action. The trigger is active. Okay, let's have a look at the actual Firebase function code. So first I did an import of Node Mailer from that Node Mailer library I just installed. I'll go down here. I did a little bit of refactoring. So one thing I did was rename this process triggers function. Seeing that's what it really does. And once it's got the particular trigger that matches, then it's going to call process trigger. And this process trigger does 2 things now. So first it gets all the user references for the application and retrieves each user information, and then it does the switch statement to do whatever sort of action the trigger's set up to do. So you see email here is the new one, and we go to send email. So this is the send email function. So for sending email, we're going to be using the Node Mailer interface. So first we do a create transport. So this is where you just describe what sort of mail service you're using. I'm using Gmail, and get the authentication information. Again, I put that into the cloud functions config to keep them secure. So I get the user code and password. I've got a little debugging code here to make sure I made it through this far. And then I set up mail options. So this is going to say what the actual mail is going to contain. So from information. This is more comment than changing much, other than changing the name the user sees as who the mail came from. set up where the email is going. So there's going to be the user's email address, and then set up the subject for the email, which is going to come from the trigger name, and then the actual body, which can be HTML formatted. I didn't do much here, but that's going to contain the message that's in the particular trigger. And then we do the actual send of the email. You see here it's just using the transporter to send mail with the mail options. And if successful, it's going to say mail has been sent as a debugging message. Otherwise, it's going to show me an error. And I was getting errors here until I set that security on the Gmail account to allow other applications to use it for sending email. So let's test it out. I'll go to my Linux subsystem, and I've got my same curl transaction here. So we'll do that. Okay, and here we see the resulting mail turn up in my mailbox.